Welcome back to the Weekly Trusted Visions podcast. Gentlemen, this is an exciting day in that we're going to wrap up our monthly series about the transition. And for our audience, it's probably the most exciting podcast because we're going to talk about, we went through how to prepare for the transition and infrastructure and repapering. Now we're going to talk day one. It's a new chapter in your career, in your practice, with your staff, and you're becoming affiliated with your new broker dealer. So it's an exciting day, but it's also a nerve-wracking day. We found through our careers, most advisors, OSJs, or enterprises probably didn't sleep well the night before day one.
Right.
Because they want to make sure everything's buttoned up. So I'm going to start off of, what to expect and how to prepare for day one, because let's be honest, 95% of the heavy lifting of a transition has already been done before day one.
Right.
So, you should have that client paperwork already prepared and ready for client signature. Now, I'll put it, a lot of advisors out there and OSJs or enterprises, not trying to say they try and get sneaky, but they try and get ahead of the curve and say, hey, I'm going to have clients sign paperwork before I'm effective, but not dated. Well, a good majority of the time, the broker-dealer regulators aren't going to find out about it. Just beware, that is a career ender for you if you do get caught. And it's just not worth the risk. David and I went through a scenario back in our past firm where an advisor did the same thing and he got caught and he's now out of the industry. And so for our audience, just don't cut corners on that type of stuff. But as it pertains to what to expect day one. And so what I would say is, make sure you've already got your website ready to be redirected. Whoever your technology person is, in this case, it's David for us. But make sure you're prepared to flip that switch to where your email is ported over. And I don't even know how that happens, David, but make sure your email is ready to be ported over. Make sure that your website is ready to go live. Make sure that any marketing material, as Sean's put it in several podcasts, that any marketing material is already approved and printed. Now, you can have that stuff printed, but you can't distribute it until you become effective. And so make sure you have all that stuff, because you don't want to be at the 11th hour. Well, now this is the 12th hour of, hey, I need to hurry up and get this welcome letter prepared. If you're going to do a press release, which I always strongly suggest that you make some sort of announcement of where you're going. And I know our team is extremely active on social media. Be prepared to blast out and celebrate this moment. Don't be stressed out about this moment of, hey, I've got so much work to do. Celebrate it. Be proud of this being a new chapter in your career. There's a reason you went through the due diligence process and chose the broker dealer you're with. Now celebrate that broker dealer. Now on the wirehouse side, make sure you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's of what you need to leave for your exiting broker dealer. Make sure that you know whether you're doing a tombstone ad or a press release and it's approved. Make sure that you've had that final conversation with your attorney to talk about your contracts and do's and don'ts. Don't not do these things because you get so inundated with what David's topic is going to be of the paperwork side of it. So that's a little bit about what to expect day one. You're going to get a lot of calls from a lot of various people, probably people within the broker dealer welcoming you. Your transition person is going to be calling you. Your licensing person is going to be calling you, which, Sean, I'm not going to steal your thunder. Don't get overwhelmed. Take this as a time to take a deep breath and say, I've got it done. And, like I said, all that heavy lifting was done before you even get ready to resign. So with that being said, Sean, I'm going to kick it off to you. And, a lot of times the main focus on day one is David's topic and the paperwork, but there's also a lot of things to consider when it comes to staff. And there's, I wouldn't say a misconception, but when you're getting submitted to FINRA in the state, when should they do that? Is it morning, afternoon, Fridays, Mondays? There's a lot of questions there. And we know when speaking into the we're living in the shoes of those recruiters and transition people in corporate America, they're going to say, well, Sean, once we submit you, FINRA has up to 30 days to approve you. And
Right.
that causes a lot of panic within
Right.
advisors because they're thinking, I'm going to be out of the water and out of business for 30 days.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about all those logistics, just so that our audience can dot their I's and cross their T's and have realistic expectations?
Sure. Well, there are a few things to consider in terms of the approval status. Now, this is not the approval of the broker dealer. This is the official approval through FINRA in your state. A couple of things just based on experience that I'll share that I think is very important for any advisor to consider. Number one, if you are a clean advisor, and let me define that because I actually had a conversation earlier this week.
I showered this morning, Sean.
Which, he did want me to clarify what exactly clean was. And then we had a running joke and he took it somewhere else. So clean is simply if you're an advisor that has, have zero disclosures, customer complaints, no liens, bankruptcies, no terminations. If that is our definition of clean in our industry. So if you fit that category, the approval process is pretty quick. I haven't experienced one transition where the approval process didn't happen day one. Day one meaning the day you resign from your previous broker dealer to the day you're affiliated with your new broker dealer. It typically is within a 24-hour span. If you resign that morning, I've seen some happen as quick as 2 hours. You're up and running with your new firm. So if you're in that category, you can remove the worry and fear of 30 days because it's typically same day. Now, if you do not fit in that category and you do have a customer complaint and it is settled, and I'll get into the pending here in a second, but if it is a settled complaint, there will be a delay. The states at this juncture will review your background. And as we both know, all three of us know, some of these state offices have like one person working and they could be on vacation. So that could be a delay in itself. But the longest, delay I've experienced with an advisor that had pending disclosures was about, well, not pending, I'm sorry, but settled disclosures was about 7 business days. It was a painful 7 business days. Because after the 3rd business day, this advisor thought that maybe his career was over. So it was a lot of coaching there. So I do, any recruiter you're working with, if you're working with us, if you're working with directly with the broker dealer, that expectation needs to be set that it could take a while, or it could take some time, not a while, but some time. Now, if you have a pending disclosure, I encourage you, and this is just my unbiased opinion, to settle that disclosure at your current broker dealer. I do not suggest you make a move. And I'm in a position where, I may benefit from you making a move, but I still would say, hey, do not make the move because I'll share an experience with you. I work with an advisor who made a transition with a pending complaint. The firm I represented felt the pending complaint wasn't detrimental to the advisor's career, and they approved him. He resigned from the previous broker dealer, joined the broker dealer I represented. It took 60 days and a call to the state before he was up and running. This particular advisor had taken out business loans to kind of soften the blow of being out of business for 60 days. It was a very painful experience. So I suggest that you just don't make the change. But if you decide to do so, be aware that it could take months before you're up and running with the new broker dealer. Also wanted to pivot to the assistants. It is very important. And I know sometimes we focus on the advisor. Sometimes the firm just focus on the advisor because that's where, the meat and potatoes are. However, the assistant is a very valuable, intricate piece to the advisor's practice. The assistant needs to follow the same protocol as far as the license. If you are resigning, you have your target date, and you're resigning the morning of, make sure that your licensed assistant resign with you. In some cases, I've worked with advisors that had the assistant resign prior to target date, just to ensure that the assistant is up and running the day of so we can get to work. If your assistant is not licensed at the new firm and you are as an advisor, unfortunately, they're not going to be able to assist you. It is a major violation if they assist and they're still affiliated with your previous firm and they're working on new paperwork or whatever items that may be taking place in your office. Major violation and could be career ending in some cases. Also, as far as resignation letter, since we're talking about that, you just want to make sure that you have your resignation letter intact. As far as the content and language of it, I've seen some resignation letters that were just one sentence long. It was "have a nice day, I'm moving on," and but so I don't think the content is more of the focus. However, you want to make sure it's ready to go because that's typically the final piece of your transition, ready to go. I suggest the morning of, especially if you're an independent advisor, and you want to make sure you have that contact at your existing firm identified. So your resignation letter is not lost in the sauce, so to speak. That's typically, there's typically someone at your firm that you're in communications with, that may be a relationship manager, maybe a point of contact at the home office that you could, email or even fax in the resignation letter to, and it should suffice.
Yeah, and with that, Sean, I always say, and a lot of advisors and groups that we work with stress out about this resignation letter of, do I got to overnight it? Do I need to certified mail it? And so one thing I always suggest to our clients is make sure on that resignation letter, well, it can be very brief, make sure you put in there, please forward me a copy of my U5. And the only reason I say that is because not that the broker dealer is going to put something on your U5, but you just want to be careful and make sure that they didn't. Now, Sean, one question I have for you is, and we get this a lot, of, hey, I've already affiliated with the new broker dealer, but I still have system access with my old broker dealer, and I still show affiliated with them. Can you talk a little bit about, just from a regulatory standpoint, how the exiting broker dealer has that period of time to submit your U5? So they may still give you system access because they haven't filed your U5. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of the 30 days that the broker dealer has to submit your U5?
Right. So within that 30 days, I mean, it depends on the firm that you're leaving. Most of the firms or the advisors that I work with came from firms that shut the system off the same day. So I haven't experienced, too many advisors that were in that scenario. However, there are some firms that they have those 30 days and they're going to look for whatever they can find within those 30 days. If you have an issue, unfortunately, that wasn't taken care of at your previous firm, they will go back in and can ding you. Unfortunately, that's just the industry we're in. So they still have 30 days. So you want to make sure, just to piggyback off that, you want to make sure that before you leave, that you just kind of have all your ducks in a row at your existing firm to where everything's settled, there's nothing pending, and you can move on without any issues once you're at the new firm.
Yeah, and to your other point about the different states, I mean, that's the advantage of working with a firm like Trusted Visions is there are some states, and I'm not picking on these states, the state of Florida, Massachusetts, California. I mean, there are some states out there that do a very thorough review. So make sure that you understand, either it's through the in-house recruiter or a team like Trusted Visions, hey, is my state in one of those categories that typically hold stuff up?
Right.
The other thing I would say to your point, Sean, is if you do have an existing, settled complaint, I mean, it all depends on the time frame or how recent it is.
Right.
But make sure that you have a broker dealer that's proactive from the perspective of, if it's been a week, are they going to reach out to the state and just say, hey, where is this at?
Right.
I would say to our audience, do not reach out to the state yourself, because I've seen this time and time again throughout my career, is if you as an individual start bothering the state, your file is probably going right back down to the bottom of the pile. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that your broker dealer, and ask them, hey, based off of my background, how long is it going to take? Now they're going to err on the side of caution and probably give you longer than it will, but also ask them, are they going to reach out to the state if there is a delay? Because you want somebody that's proactive, that has that relationship with the state. So great point, Sean. Now, David, I'm going to kick this off to you because 70% of the work that our audience has done up until day one has really been surrounded by paperwork. And so now it's a matter of how do, in your experience and throughout your career, what advice do you give to our audience when it comes to how do you get that paperwork signed? What do you expect? What have you seen work better than others that have tried it? Because we've had a lot of different groups. I mean, one large group that we moved last year, they had 80% of their assets moved over in less than 30 days, which is pretty unheard of.
Mhm.
And when I say 80% of their assets, they had 14,000 accounts. So, David, probably one of the most important topics, talk to our audience a little bit about paperwork.
Absolutely. You guys hit the nail on the head. You're looking at this is day number one. This is the second part of the transition. And I would say not only the prep work that went along with it was extremely important, but this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where assets get moved. This is where your clients get settled. And this is where hopefully, like you said, 30 days, you've done a really good job. You can sleep a little better at that point when you've got 80% of your assets moved over. So I look at it as it's a quality of life for our advisors. The quicker you can get this done, the quicker it's going to be easy. It puts some ease to you and your staff. There's no doubt about it. But it's really where a lot of the hard work begins. And the biggest key, and I talked a little bit about this last week, is organization is key. You have to be organized when it comes to having your checklist, having your timelines. Where do you want to be in 30 days? Is that a realistic goal with the staffing that you have to get the paperwork signed and get that turned back around? Or are you looking at 60 days or 90 days in some cases? But it all comes down to being organized. And once you've kind of gone through that day one process, okay, am I approved? You guys have already talked about that, the licensing. Hey, we got the green light at this point. The night before or the day of, you should have and meet with your entire staff. And there should be a game plan set for everybody, whether it's yourself, whether it's your staff that you have with you full-time, or whether you even hired some part-time or temporary staff to help you get through this transitional period, which what I would say in a lot of cases, when you've got a lot of accounts, that's definitely a must. You want to look at hiring other individuals to kind of help you with the paperwork and track the process and everything that goes along with it. Then you got to map that entire process of how you're going to go about getting that done. Are you mailing the majority of that to your clients? Are they getting that information signed and tracking that when it comes back in? If you're doing a majority of it, mailing to a lot of your clients, we've talked a little bit about that process before, your A, B, and C clients, and the process may be a little bit different. Whether you're going to be doing a signing party for a lot of your A and B clients, and then you're mailing exclusively to your C clients to get them to get the paperwork signed and get that returned to you as soon as possible. But as in all situations, the quicker you can get your A clients moved over, the better. So whether you know your clients better than anybody else, is that going to be setting a meeting? Is that going to be meeting directly with your client? Does it mean you're going to go out to their home and get the paperwork signed and meet with them? You have to have that process organized of what you're going to do with your A, B, and C clients. And of course, A should be the top priority. So they're either need to be calling day one to, just another intro call saying, hey, we've got everything moved over. You're going to be getting the paperwork in the mail. If you have any questions, give us a call. We're ready to answer any of that, but we need to get that turned around as soon as possible. If they're not comfortable with that, get them into the office, meet with them directly, but you have to have that plan in place because these are the clients that are bringing the majority of your revenue for your practice. So they have to have the white glove service, is what I tell a lot of people. Make sure they're not missed when you're going through that process. And
hey,
tracking.
David, one question for you is, and this doesn't pertain to the wirehouse side because they typically can't do it, but
right.
Independent to independent, what advice would you give to our audience as it pertains to prior to day one? Should they have already set an appointment with those clients, those A clients or top tier clients, so that it's already set and they're not scrambling day one to try and set that appointment?
Yes, I think that's it's always a good thing to have some of those meetings set in place. It's kind of part of your transition plan. Like you said, I'm always hesitant to give that advice depending on whether exactly where you're coming from. Do you have all your ducks in a row? Are you coming from a wirehouse? So I'm always hesitant about that because it is one of those deals where some people can perceive that you're setting a meeting and getting ahead of the 8 ball. You and I have witnessed that a few times of getting signatures and getting things like that put in place. Make sure none of those meetings are set until after you are green lit. And you got to take that in consideration again too. That's why working with us, we can kind of help you through that a little bit even before that. If you've got some kind of a disclosure, you've got some delay, you want to be very hesitant on getting those meetings set and put in place, because you may not be green lit at that point. And the last thing you want to do is jeopardize your career. So I always exercise the side of caution. If you're clean and you're working with a firm like Trusted Visions, we've kind of outlined what to expect, and you have a real good, comfortable, you're comfortable with what the process is going to look like, and that's going to be pretty clean, and you're going to be switched on day number one. Absolutely. Start prepping those calls, having those conversations, and having that all that information put together. But then also having somebody on your staff that's tracking this. You want to be able to track this. Not on a daily basis, a little bit more difficult, but they have to have access to your new broker dealer system, but you need to be tracking it on a weekly basis. What has been moved over, what accounts are outstanding, so you can basically follow up on those, especially with your A and B clients on that side of it. Your C clients, you can put a little bit more delay on that side, but you want to make sure that it's also being tracked. And don't forget, as one of the things we talked about a lot, is don't forget to include new updates and services, and have some kind of a letter, some kind of a marketing piece put together of talking about any new services or any new products or any new avenues that you can utilize with your client when you made this move to this new broker dealer. Because we're hoping every time you make a move, there's going to be a lot of positives to go along with it. Paperwork and everything else are the negatives, but you want the positives of what your practice is going to look like going forward, what other services and things that you have to provide. Don't miss this opportunity to be able to work with your current and existing clients and help them grow their business on that side. Don't pass up that opportunity when you're looking at the paperwork side of it. So that's kind of it. And I didn't get into the minutia of what's going to be required and how to get all that stuff filled out and get it all signed, but you got to have a plan in place. And I'll reiterate it again, being organized on how you're going to get it done, and talk to people at Trusted Visions, talk to your broker dealer. Where have they seen the best things that come into play? Whether it's, mailing processes, things like that. Learn from other people's mistakes on a lot of that, because it's not like you do this as an advisor, it's not like you do this every single year. So there's always new technology, and there's always new services that are out there that you be provided for and get you set up for success, to get your clients transitioned as quickly and hopefully as painless as possible.
Yeah, and to that point, David, with what Sean was saying, make sure for our audience, make sure that you're not going out and getting client signatures till you've heard from your new broker dealer, hey, you are now effective. Because a misconception out there with our audience is, hey, I've resigned, I can go get client signatures. That's not the case, because you're not effective with that new broker dealer. So make sure that you are effective. Don't go out there. We've seen this in all of our careers, where they go out and get client signatures, they submit it to the broker dealer, and it gets rejected because they say, well, today's the 22nd, you weren't effective till the 23rd. Now you got to go back to your clients, to your point, David, about being organized. Now you got to go back to your clients and say, hey, I know you already signed this, but you got to sign it again. Right. Now, one last question for you, David. And again, this is one of the advantages of working with a firm like ours. You come from the insurance background. And so can you talk a little bit about the appointment paperwork when it comes to these new annuity companies? Because a lot of advisors forget to think about that. They submit the new account form and it gets rejected by that annuity company. So can you talk just for a minute about appointment paperwork and the importance of that?
Absolutely. When you're looking at the insurance side of the world, there's a lot of things that come into play when you're looking to get appointed with a new firm. And this is something that working with a firm like Trusted Visions, and also working with your new broker dealer, as we talked about earlier, getting product approvals, getting everything in place before you make the move, trying to get that exception made can be difficult, because in some cases, it depends on who the IMO you're working with. If you're working with an IMO that's not associated with your new broker dealer, but was with the old one, you're going to run into some complications, not only of getting in most cases, getting your licensing put in place is one thing, but getting your clients transitioned is a whole nother set. Because you could run into a situation, especially on the insurance side of the world, where yes, they'll allow you to move your license, allow you to basically move your client's accounts and put you as the agent of record, but they won't move the commissions. They won't move the trails. They won't move everything else because it was assigned through that either an IMO that's not going to release them or your broker dealer that is not going to release them, especially if you're talking about, we don't see them as much anymore, but proprietary fund, proprietary accounts, things like that, where there's a relationship where those are non-transferable, you need to know ahead of time. The good and the bad about the insurance side of the world is you don't find as many products, except when you look at the VA and it's a little bit more streamlined, but you don't see as many trails, but that's becoming more and more popular, especially in the fixed arena on the insurance side of the world and things like that, where revenues and trails on those can be very significant for an advisor that's doing a lot in that side of the business. So making sure that you not only can move your appointment and get that account moved over, but what is it going to look like? Are you simply going to be the advisor of record? And then the other big fact going forward is, are you going to continue to get paid for that? Because you can during the process. And that's another huge advantage of working with a firm like ours, as we can help you mitigate that and start talking and having those conversations of what you can do to leverage to get those commissions moved over. Because once that IMO, once you get moved over in a lot of cases, you've got to get them to release those commissions. Most of them want to continue to do it, especially if they have a relationship with both the broker dealers. But if they don't, that takes a lot of power that you have to move some of those commissionable accounts over. So
Yeah,
it can be.
And one other point to that is, even if you're already appointed with some of those annuity companies like a Prudential or whomever, you still have to be reappointed. Don't think
Right.
just because you're appointed today with your current broker dealer, your appointment paperwork is automatically renewed. That's not the case. So team, this has been a great month and great for our audience to really talk in the weeds, trenches of a transition and what's entailed. We hope that our audience has found this useful and helpful. I will preface it as our marketing director and videographer is on vacation this week. So when you see this, you're not going to get the flashy intro and audience because I am technologically deficient and have no idea how he does it. So I just want to state that. If you have any questions or want to talk to one of the Trusted Visions team, please comment on our LinkedIn or Facebook page. Feel free to message us or email us at info@trustedvisions.com. We will move on to next month's topic next week. Audience, thank you. Team, thank you so much for taking part in this, and hope that everybody's found it to be helpful.